For 8 painful years, a devoted wife silently sacrificed everything to support the family that never accepted her, until one shocking truth exposed who had really been paying for everything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more powerful emotional stories every week. For 8 long years, everyone in that house called her only one thing: that woman. Not Rebekah. Not a daughter. Not even a wife. Just that woman. Every morning before the sun touched the windows, Rebekah was already awake. She prepared breakfast, cleaned every room, packed lunches, ironed clothes, and made sure everyone in the family had everything they needed before they even asked. Yet no one ever thanked her. Instead, criticism filled the house like cold air. If breakfast is late again, what exactly are you good for? You should learn how a real wife behaves. You've been here for years and still don't know your place. Rebekah would simply lower her head and whisper, "I'm sorry." She had learned that silence caused fewer arguments than defending herself. But the most painful part wasn't her mother-in-law's cruel words. It was her husband, Daniel. Whenever his mother insulted Rebekah, he looked away. Whenever his sisters laughed at her, he stayed silent. And every time Rebekah searched his face for support, she found nothing. How can the person who promised to protect you become the one who watches you suffer? Then something strange would happen whenever guests arrived. The same husband who ignored her all day suddenly smiled with pride. "This is my beautiful wife, Rebekah, the love of my life." Visitors admired them. "What a wonderful couple. You are so lucky to have such a caring wife." Daniel would gently place his hand around Rebekah's shoulder, pretending she was the most precious woman in the world. Rebekah forced herself to smile. The moment the front door closed behind the visitors, everything changed. The smile disappeared. His hand slipped away. Once again, she became invisible. No one noticed that while everyone believed Daniel was providing for the family, bills were quietly being paid behind the scenes. The groceries always appeared. The electricity never went off. The children's school fees were somehow covered. No one ever asked where the money came from. One day they'll see the truth. But until then, I'll keep carrying this family. Rebekah wiped away a silent tear before returning to the kitchen, because dinner still had to be served. Everything had changed 3 years after Rebekah and Daniel were married. One rainy afternoon, Daniel walked through the front door looking like a man who had lost everything. His shoulders were heavy, his eyes avoided hers, and his hands trembled as he loosened his tie. "I lost my job," he whispered. The room fell silent. Rebekah walked toward him without hesitation and gently held his hands. "We'll get through this together." Daniel nodded, but fear filled his heart. "My family can never know," he said quietly. "If they find out, they'll never respect me again." Rebekah looked at the man she loved. She knew how proud he was, and she couldn't bear to see him broken. "I promise," she replied softly. "Your secret is safe with me." The very next week, Rebekah used her small savings to start a tiny food business. She woke before dawn to prepare meals, sold homemade dishes during the day, and returned home before anyone noticed where she had been. Little by little, her business grew. Every dollar she earned went straight to the family. She paid the electricity bills. She bought groceries. She covered school fees for Daniel's nieces and nephews. When his sisters needed money, Rebekah quietly placed cash into Daniel's hands so everyone would believe he was still the family's provider. And every single time, they praised him. "Our brother never disappoints us. Daniel always saves the family." Rebekah simply smiled from the corner of the room. Not one person asked who had truly made the sacrifice. Was love supposed to feel this lonely? Months turned into years. The business became successful, but Rebekah's life did not become easier. The more she gave, the less she was appreciated. Every insult cut a little deeper, yet she refused to complain. "If my patience can protect the man I love, then maybe one day all this pain will be worth it." She believed that real love meant standing beside someone through every storm. But she never realized that while she was protecting Daniel's dignity, she was slowly losing her own. The call came just before sunset. Daniel's voice shook as he spoke into the phone. "Rebekah, please come to the hospital. It's my mother." Without asking another question, Rebekah grabbed her bag and rushed out the door. When she arrived, she found the entire family standing outside the emergency room. The same people who had mocked her for years now looked frightened and helpless. A doctor stepped forward with a serious expression. "I'm afraid your mother has advanced kidney failure. She needs immediate treatment and regular dialysis. Without it, her condition could become life-threatening." Silence filled the hallway. Then came the next blow. The hospital requires a large deposit before treatment can begin. Everyone looked at Daniel. His sisters looked at him. His relatives looked at him. Even his mother reached for his hand with hopeful eyes. But Daniel lowered his head. I don't have the money." For the first time in years, the family realized the man they had always depended on had nothing left to give. Panic spread across every face. Who would save them now? Rebekah quietly stepped forward. "I'll take care of it." The room fell silent. No one expected those words from the woman they had spent years insulting. That night, Rebekah emptied the savings account she had built over countless sleepless mornings. The money she had carefully saved to attend culinary school disappeared in a single transfer. The next day, she sold the delivery van that kept her small business running. A few days later, she even let go of valuable equipment she had worked so hard to buy. Every dream she had built with patience was slowly slipping away. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "You would give up everything, even after the way my family treated you?" Rebekah smiled through tired eyes. "They're your family, and that makes them mine too. Maybe kindness will finally open the hearts that hatred never could." Treatment began immediately. Daniel's mother slowly recovered, while the family praised Daniel once again for saving her life. Rebekah remained in the background, unnoticed. Not because she wanted recognition, but because love had taught her to give without expecting anything in return. A few months later, the house fell into silence once again. Daniel's mother had passed away. The woman who had spent years calling Rebekah that woman was gone, leaving behind grief, unfinished words, and a family facing another painful reality. The funeral would cost far more than anyone expected. Relatives gathered around the dining table, each avoiding eye contact. Finally, Daniel's older sister broke the silence. "Rebekah has always handled these situations. She'll pay for the funeral too." The others nodded without hesitation. It was as though her sacrifices had become an obligation instead of a choice. Daniel slowly looked toward his wife. He didn't ask if she could afford it. He simply waited for her to say yes, just like she always had. Rebekah stood quietly. For the first time in 8 years, there were no tears in her eyes. Only calm. Only truth. She took a deep breath. "I can't do it anymore." The room froze. "What do you mean?" one of the sisters asked. Rebekah looked at each face around the table. "The groceries you've eaten for years. I paid for them. The school fees. I paid them. The family celebrations. I paid for every one. When your businesses failed and your children needed help, I gave Daniel the money so you would never know he had lost his job. And the hospital bills that saved Mother's life." She paused. "I paid every single one." No one spoke. The silence was louder than any argument. Daniel lowered his head, unable to deny a single word. His sisters stared at him in disbelief. The truth they had ignored for years had finally found its voice. How could they have been so blind? Rebekah reached into her handbag and placed an envelope on the table. "There is enough here to cover half of the funeral expenses." Everyone looked at her in surprise. "The rest is your responsibility." Then she turned to Daniel. "I protected your pride for 8 years. I carried this family because I loved you. But love should never require someone to disappear. Today, I choose myself for the first time." She picked up her suitcase and walked toward the front door. No one tried to stop her. They finally understood that the woman they had called that woman had been the foundation of their entire family. The door closed behind her. And with it, 8 years of silence came to an end. Rebekah walked away with only a suitcase in one hand and her dignity in the other. For the first time in 8 years, no one called her back. No one asked her to cook another meal. No one expected another sacrifice. The silence that once felt painful now felt peaceful. She moved into her friend Emma's small apartment. It wasn't luxurious, But every corner of that home welcomed her with something she had almost forgotten existed: respect. One evening, as they shared a simple dinner, Emma smiled and asked, "Rebekah, before marriage, what was your biggest dream?" Rebekah looked down at her hands. "I always wanted to become a professional chef." Emma's eyes lit up. "Then why did you give it up?" Rebekah smiled sadly. "Because everyone else's dreams became more important than mine." The next morning, she made a decision she should have made years ago. She enrolled in a respected culinary academy. Every class reminded her that she wasn't too old to begin again. Every recipe she mastered rebuilt a piece of the confidence she had lost. Months later, one of her instructors recommended her for a position at a luxury restaurant. Her talent quickly earned admiration. Customers praised her creativity. Food critics spoke about the warmth and heart in every dish she prepared. Soon, Rebekah became the head chef. The woman once ignored in her own home was finally being recognized for who she truly was. Meanwhile, Daniel's life was filled with regret. The family struggled without the quiet strength that had carried them for years. One afternoon, he visited the restaurant and saw Rebekah standing proudly in her chef's uniform, surrounded by people who respected her. He quietly whispered, "I lost the best thing that ever happened to me." Rebekah heard his voice, but simply smiled with kindness. She no longer carried anger. She no longer carried guilt. She had finally learned the difference between being needed and being loved. Can a broken heart bloom again? Yes, when it finally belongs to the person who protects it. I spent years saving everyone else. Now it's finally my turn to live the life I deserve. Rebekah looked around her kitchen, filled with laughter, purpose, and hope. For the first time in many years, she truly felt at home. Moral: the greatest act of love is learning to never abandon yourself for people who never valued your heart.